Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over an upcoming Christmas winter storm that's going to be impacting much of the northern plains and the Great Lakes, as well as portions of the interior northeast. Some of these areas could be seeing a 6+ inch snowstorm. We're going to be giving you my personal snowfall forecast for this event, and if you would like a personal forecast or you would like to know how much snowfall I think will fall in your area, leave a comment down below and I'll try and get back to you guys within about an hour or two of you posting it. We have a lot to get to cover in today's video, so let's get right into it. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like, and it's definitely very active. We'll go from west to east. We have some frost advisories for portions of western Oregon, as well as some winter storm watches in effect for portions of California, the Dakotas, into portions of Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, as well as another area for western upstate New York. We also see some winter weather advisories scattered through portions of the northern Rockies, with some high wind watches and warnings in effect for much of the central and northern plains. We see some winter weather advisories also for portions of South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, and northeastern Minnesota, as well as some wind advisories for portions of New Mexico, portions of the Southwest, and into portions of southern Idaho there. We also see some red flag warnings in effect for portions of Southern California and for portions of Kansas, as well as some more winter weather related advisories for portions of western and northern parts of Alaska there. So let's get right into it, and let's start off with your GFS model, and then we'll look at what the European model is showing for a lot of different factors. Now, here's what the GFS is showing, and this is definitely going to be a very, very dynamic system. What we're going to see is this high pressure exiting out and moving out to the east. This is not really going to have too big of an impact on the storm. We're going to see this low pressure continue to move to the north, but we also start to see this little piece of energy jut out, and that'll actually become a secondary low pressure system that will be connected by one big cold front that's going to bring some snow on that back end and then some severe weather on that eastern end of the storm. So definitely there's a lot of moving parts with this system. This is going to be going through tomorrow through about Saturday, which would be the day after Christmas. Now, here to be by December 23rd, and this would be, again, tomorrow in the morning hours, and we're looking at some very gusty winds ahead of this storm, probably closer to 30 or 40 miles per hour, and as you get closer to the east coast, that's where you could be seeing some gusts closer to 50 or 60 miles per hour in some isolated locations. Now, this would be by Wednesday late in the morning, getting into Wednesday into the evening hours, and we're now starting to see a developing cold front. Now, what we also see is this V shape in the isobars that indicates usually that we have some convection along here, and that also is a signal that we have a cold front somewhere along there, and we can definitely tell that we do have a cold front that's along with some precipitation, and that's also along with some convection and some severe weather. We see that to the north and to the west of the storm we're dealing with actually some snow, and we do see also that in the upper parts of the atmosphere, probably about 4,000 to 5,000 or more feet up, we see a little bit of a change in the wind direction where it's actually going a little bit more southerly in these areas, so that's going to allow for the precipitation to really shut off. If you live within this area from about Wisconsin southwestward, you're really not going to see too much precip because you're getting these warm southerly winds with very, very little moisture to them. So you are going to see a little bit of a hole of precipitation right throughout this region. Now, as we continue this forward, you start to see a little bit of snow on the back end. I don't know how valid that is. I think more of the snow in those areas in Indiana and western Michigan is going to come in the form of lake effect behind the system. So don't count on too much snow as you get early on Thursday morning on the back end of that cold front. I really don't have too much confidence in that actually happening. We also see some thunderstorms as you get down into Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and that region, where you are looking at potentially a threat of severe weather, and we'll also talk about that in a later part of this video. Now, we start to see more of those southerly winds again ahead of this front. We have warm southerly winds with some very, very moist air. On that back end, we have some very cold, dry air with some very cold air that's probably going to make it down into the below zero areas for portions of Minnesota and the Dakotas, and then getting even into Wisconsin, and then potentially some wind chill chills below zero for these regions as the storm moves by, and as you have that snowpack already on the ground. So we will be dealing with a very chilly Christmas, and especially the Saturday right after Christmas is going to be especially cold for a lot of these areas over the eastern United States. We start to see some more snow break out. That shifts a little bit further to the south. Again, I don't think it's too likely, especially because you will start to get the sun rising by this point, so that'll help mitigate any accumulations as you get into Tennessee, Kentucky, and southern Indiana in that region. And then as we get to the early evening hours on Thursday, and then here's the late evening hours, we're starting to see a wider band of snowfall move through portions of Ohio, West Virginia, westernmost Pennsylvania, and you can see a much wider band of that snowfall as you get more of that cold air to dip down into the eastern United States. And then ahead of this, you're going to probably see a 20-degree temperature swing within about 30 to 60 minutes of this front passing because of how quickly it's going to move and also how sharp that gradient is. And we'll actually talk about that again a little bit more later on in the video because we could be dealing with some flash freeze possibilities. And that warm southerly flow, which is just screaming off the Atlantic with winds closer to 50 or 60 miles per hour, is going to help aid in some of those warmer temperatures. And also you have the same and actually the reverse effect on that back end where you're actually looking at some very, very cold air in place for those regions. And this would be by Christmas morning, and we're seeing most of the snow wrap up. We're dealing with a line of thunderstorms moving through portions of New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and that'll move through into eastern New England. But then I think probably as you're waking up on Christmas morning, probably past about 12 p.m. Eastern time, much of the rain and snow and all of that is out of here, except if you live in New Hampshire, Maine, or eastern Massachusetts. Maybe that'll stick around until maybe 3 or 4 p.m. But I think much of your Christmas day, while it will be cloudy, will probably be fine in terms of precipitation. The only thing you'll be having to deal with is if you live in the Ohio Valley, digging out from that snow you got, and also potentially cleaning up from any power outage situations that you might have seen because of those strong winds and all of that. But I think in terms of precipitation and weather-wise, it is going to be quite a nice Christmas day, although it will be a little bit chilly. And then that front moves by, and again, it's pretty much all said and done with as we get to Friday evening or Christmas evening, where you're looking at the front really moving out of here. So here's what the GFS shows for snowfall, and we're looking at anywhere in those grays, under an inch to 2 inches, 2 to 6 inches in the blues, 6 to 10 inches in the purples, and we're looking at a good swath of 6 or more inches according to the GFS. I think these amounts are a little bit overdone. I think it'll be probably closer to 4 or 5 inches, but that's still stuff that we have to figure out. We still have a couple days until the storm hits, so definitely a lot can still change. And then here's what the European model is showing, and definitely amounts are much higher, especially closer to the Smoky Mountains, and then also closer to the Great Lakes over portions of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and western upstate New York, where it's printing out maybe closer to 20 inches. And that is, again, a possibility, but it's also going to be quite hard to produce that much snowfall within about 6 hours of this front moving. Some of that snow will, of course, be lake effect driven. Now, here's something that I was talking about a little bit earlier in the video, and that's that dry slot that we see over portions of Wisconsin, Illinois, eastern Iowa, Missouri, and that's the reason that you guys won't be seeing any rain or snow out of this, really, is because we're seeing in the upper levels of the atmosphere, if you were looking at the isobars on the GFS at the surface, these isobars were actually going straight westward, so you would assume there would be some sort of you would assume there would be some sort of precipitation if that were to be the case, because the western if the winds were going from the west, you would actually pick up some of that moisture. But because in the upper levels of the atmosphere we're dealing with that warm southerly flow, that's actually helping drive some of that warmer and also drier conditions over those regions, over the western Great Lakes. So that's why you guys are probably going to miss out on some of that. And then also behind the system, we do have some rather dry air right behind it. So behind the system, behind that cold front, right behind it, we're going to be dealing with some very dry conditions and also some very cool conditions and very cold conditions. Now, here are the chances of seeing at least 1 inch, and you can see we have a fairly good shot of over 50% for much of the Ohio Valley there. But then as we switch that over to 3 inches, and you can see it's really focused over eastern Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and then some of those areas around the Great Lakes. And then if we look at your probability of over 6 inches of snowfall. You can see that's very isolated with those higher amounts, probably closer to northeastern Ohio, northern Pennsylvania, and western and southwesternmost upstate New York, as well as that another area for the Smoky Mountains. And then if we look at your chances of over 12 inches, and that's all centered around the Great Lakes. So definitely the chances are there, but it's going to be probably closer to a 4 or 5 inch accumulation, maybe not a 12 to 14 or 15 inch accumulation like some of you guys may have been seeing on the internet. Now, here are your maximum wind gusts from this event, and we're also looking at maybe closer to 50 to 60 miles per hour, and maybe even a couple of 70 mile per hour gusts if the European model is correct. And I think these will be a little bit lower than what is shown, but still, even if it's 40 or 50 miles per hour, that's still enough to bring down some trees. Luckily, it will be harder to bring down those trees if it's just rain. If you had heavy wet snow, of course, that would make it much easier to break down those trees, but I think it'll be, you won't see as many power outages as you might expect if you were to see these types of gusts, mainly just because you don't have any snow that's on those trees. That's really heavy wet snow that's gonna bring down those branches, and also the only precipitation that you're dealing with is some moderate to at times heavy rainfall. So power outage threats are definitely there, but I don't think they're as significant as you might think from these wind gusts. Now, also here's just a good example of that cold front that's going to be moving through. We see this is just a random time. This is early on Christmas morning. We're dealing with 59 degrees according to the European model, and that would be over southeastern Pennsylvania on the eastern part of this front. Here's your front, by the way, and it's very easily defined. And then on that west side of the front, you're looking at 35 degrees. As you get further west, maybe closer to the 20-degree mark. So definitely you are looking at some very, very sharp temperature gradients, and that will lead to a flash freeze as we go on through the day, especially on Christmas morning. You could be dealing with some any standing water could freeze over on Christmas morning, so definitely be aware of that. Now, here are your low temperatures by Wednesday. Most of that cold air is centered over the western U.S., but then you start to see that shifts eastward, and you start to see more of that cold air through the north central United States, and then that shifts even more further to the east as we get to Christmas. And then here's the day after Christmas, and it's really cold over much of the eastern United States, and much of the United States as a whole is in a below normal pattern. If this were to be the case, then we're only 5 days out from this actually occurring. So here's also another component to this, your severe weather aspect. We have a marginal risk of severe weather for Wednesday into Thursday early in the morning. That's over portions of the central Gulf states. And then as we look at your individual risks, here's your chances of a tornado. And they're fairly low, but still possible. 2% chance over these regions. 5% chance of wind damage. And again, still low, but definitely possible. And then we don't have really any significant hail threat with this. Now, here's your day 3 outlook from the Storm Prediction Center, and we're looking at a marginal risk for portions of Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, as well as another area from the Carolinas northward into the Delmarva, and you even have a slight risk of severe weather over eastern North Carolina, which is actually fairly rare for this time of year. And you can see that we have about a 15% chance of severe weather severe weather over to these areas according to the Storm Prediction Center for this would be Thursday into Friday. Now, here's the temperatures, and just looking at a couple different factors. We have very warm temperatures up into the upper 60s, maybe even low 70s over the eastern Carolinas. So definitely we don't have any shortage of warm air. Here's what your humidity looks like a little bit higher up in the atmosphere, and we're looking at a strong southerly flow, which is bringing in some very, very moist air, and definitely you don't have any issues with moisture in the atmosphere. If you're looking at Cape, this is where you don't have too much of it, and this is showing you the amount of energy in the atmosphere, and you're looking at maybe 300 to 500, so that's not a lot, but definitely enough to generate a thunderstorm or two. And then here would be your K index, which on the bottom left part of your screen, that's kind of the value chart. So we do see a couple 30 to 35 numbers, which would indicate scattered thunderstorms. So definitely it is a possibility that you would see some thunderstorms over these regions, and definitely we don't have any shortage of warm air or moisture for this event. And then here's your wind shear, and not the highest, but you could definitely see a little bit of wind shear mixed in there, and that could definitely help with some of your severe weather. Now, Here's my forecast for this event, and this is my snowfall forecast. And this is from tomorrow into Saturday. Under an inch of snowfall for portions of the northern plains into the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and then back through the interior northeast. This is where you might not even get a dusting. It'll be probably just flakes in these areas, so don't expect any accumulation of significance over these regions. But this is your 1 to 3 inch area, and this includes much of the Ohio Valley, especially the eastern Ohio Valley, up through the interior northeast, the upper Great Lakes, and then back through into the northern plains, where you guys could be seeing over an inch of snowfall to maybe up to 3 inches of snowfall. Here's your 3 to 6 inch region, and that includes much of Minnesota, South Dakota, into portions of the upper Great Lakes, the western side of Michigan there, and then also the eastern side of the Ohio Valley, where you guys could be seeing over 3 inches of snowfall, maybe up to 6 inches of snowfall in some areas. And I'll definitely be adjusting these numbers a little bit in the near future. And then here's your 6 to 12 inch region. We see one area for portions of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the UP of Michigan, as well as another 2 areas for the Smoky Mountains, and another area along the Great Lakes for portions of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and western upstate New York. And then here's that 12 to 18 inch region, probably closer to 12 to 14 inches to be more exact. And we're looking at that over portions of the Smoky Mountains, as well as some 12 to 18 inch amounts for portions of northernmost Wisconsin and the northeasternmost part of Minnesota. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. If you would like a personal forecast, leave a comment down below, and I'll try to answer you guys within about an hour or two of you posting it. Hopefully you guys did like the detail that I put into this video, and hopefully you guys do like the format that I use. If you have any critiques on how I do my videos, or if you want to make any suggestions, again, leave a comment down below. And also, if you do enjoy the content, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.